flood, flood education virtual sessions. I'm Dawn Hawkins Nixon with Prince George's County Department of the Environment, Sustainability Division. We, as a division, have been asked to share with our residents and other stakeholders information that can assist them with preparing for hurricane season, which starts June 1 and runs through November. We're also been asked to help our residents understand what causes flooding. I mean, basically, most of us have a sense as to what causes flooding, but to get a better sense as to where you are, your exposure to flooding, we thought we would share with you a few tips, a few resources to help you identify flood hazard areas, to prepare yourself as to what to do when you're forewarned, there's a forecast of a significant rain event coming your way. We all understand that during the summer months, we have experienced heavy downpours as a result of the humidity, the heat, the precipitation in the air. And many times these heavy downpours result in what we call flash flooding. You'll hear a lot about that during this session. But we also want to help residents understand that every storm event will not necessarily result in flooding. And when we see, water running through our yards, sometimes that's what it's supposed to do. But if that conveyance of flow through your yard becomes intrusive on your structure, it becomes very problematic, and we want to hear from you. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll talk to you, or I'm sorry, the next few weeks, we'll talk to you about various topics relating to flooding. As you can see on your screen, today is session 1, where we're going to talk about the basics, watershed basics and flood basics. And then we'll go on to talk about some of the risk reduction measures that you can take to reduce your flood risk or response and recovery. So with that brief opening, I want to turn the presentation over to my team member, Lilantha Tinnekun, who will bring to you session 1. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. So my name is Lilantha Tinnekun. I work in the flood group here in the Sustainability Division of the Department of Environment, Prince George's County. Thank you all for making the time to attend our presentation. As Dawn mentioned, we will be having 4 sessions throughout the month of June. This is the first one where we will present just the basics of what is flooding, who may be at risk, how do you get information, how can you keep us informed of your problems related to flooding, and we'll give a little bit of the background on when we talk about flooding. We mention watersheds and what makes a watershed, and some of you may be familiar with it. For others, it may be a good primer on all things flood and watershed related. Session 2 and session 3 and 4 will follow next Thursdays, the following Thursdays, where we'll get more in depth into other topics. So moving on. We are with the Sustainability Division of the Department of Environment. And so the first topic I'll cover is watershed basics. And if any of you have questions, feel free to put it on the chat, and Dawn will be monitoring it. And I might at times pause during the presentation and just ask if you guys have questions. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions at that time too, but we will have at least 20 to 30 minutes dedicated towards the end of this presentation for some Q&A. So you can wait till that time too. Watershed basics. You may have heard of watersheds, catchment areas, drainage area. Those are three of the more common ones. They all mean the same thing. Essentially, an area where rainfall that falls all gets conveyed to a point. And that point could be literally a point, could be a junction on where a stream meets another stream. It could be a pond, a lake. It could even be an ocean. Usually, when we refer to watersheds in the context of Prince George's County, it is a river. So there is the Anacostia River watershed. There could be the Potomac River watershed. There could be the larger ones, and there could also be smaller ones within, for example, the Anacostia watershed. You may have smaller watersheds such as Watts Branch and Oxen Run. Well, that's not part of the Anacostia, but Oxen Run watershed, Watts Branch. So you can have watersheds at different scales, essentially, though, and catchment area, drainage area, they all mean the same thing. It's just people from different backgrounds tend to use different terminologies, but it's essentially that land area from where rainfall all gets collected to a single location, be that a pond or a stream. So in the context of watersheds, all of Prince George's County falls within the Chesapeake Bay watershed. That first figure on the left is the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Most of Maryland falls within the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So there, the outlet point is the bay, which is not a single point, but it is a huge area. But the entire land area that drains to the Chesapeake Bay is what we call the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And other than a small western portion of Maryland, all of Maryland drains to the Chesapeake Bay, and all of Prince George's County drains into the bay. That red asterisk is where our county is located. And as you can see, parts of Pennsylvania and New York also drain, including Virginia and Delaware. The map on the figure on the right, the rightmost figure, are the different watersheds within Prince George's County. So while all of our land flows into the bay, now when you scale down, scale up, sorry, you can have sub watersheds within that watershed. So we have the right portion of our county drains into the Patuxent River, and the left, or the western portion of our county, drains into the Potomac River. Now, both the Patuxent and Potomac eventually end up in the bay, but when we're talking in the context of the county, we will talk about the smaller watersheds that exist within our county. Now, in the Potomac, we have a part that drains into the Anacostia, and then there is also another part that drains directly into the Potomac. The Anacostia eventually does flow into the Potomac once it enters the district. The figure in the middle is the Anacostia River watershed, and as you can see, these don't follow county boundaries or any jurisdictional boundaries. The upland areas lie in Montgomery County. Northeast, northwest branch of the Anacostia drains into our county, Prince George's, and then it flows into the district from where it joins the Potomac. We have about 9 major watersheds in the county. The Anacostia several in the Patuxent, and then there is the Piscataway, the Western Branch. Some of you may have heard these names. Henson Creek Watershed and Oxen Run, and at the southern end we have the Mattawoman Creek Watershed. But it's find that unique that you could bisect the county into two separate watersheds: the section that drains into the Patuxent and the section that drains into the Potomac. And all that moving on. So the major ways that rainfall flows along the land, there are several major ways. Usually in the past or in rural areas, it would be mostly overland flow or through natural surfaces. The leftmost figure shows, and the third figure shows more natural ones, even though the first figure you see that the water flows overland through a grassy area, but eventually flows into a storm drain inlet. The second figure is a concrete channel, and the last one is a culvert where the flow is taken, culvert or a pipe where the flow is taken underground temporarily or for a longer duration. So these are some of the major ways that rainfall in our county flows into natural streams, and or to the lakes and ponds that exist. Now, in this Prince George's County is primarily urban. It's considered an urban county, at least the western portion. So those tend to have storm drain systems, concrete channels, and and even roads can convey flow during high flow events. And I will maybe get back to this slide later on. Our department is currently conducting several studies, and this slide talks about those watershed studies that we are currently conducting, and which includes the Piscataway and the Western Branch watersheds, and the Henson and Oxen Run, and two small sub-watersheds in the Anacostia. But if during the Q&A, I can mention this in more detail. So that's the watershed basics and how water flows through our land. We will now talk about some of the types of flooding and causes of flooding. Before I get into those basics, most of you probably are familiar with the 2 points written on this slide. Floods are the most frequent natural disaster that occurs in the United States and in our county, and they can occur within a few minutes or maybe over several days, maybe even weeks. And there is strong evidence that incidences of flooding are becoming more and more severe due to increases in extreme weather. In the county, we have had several major events in the past decade and beyond. The last time a tropical storm impacted us was in 2011, a widespread tropical storm. We have had maybe remnants of tropical storms, or certain patches of the county may have gotten exposed to a tropical storm event, but widespread, or pretty much the entire county got impacted in 2011. That's not on this slide. That was Tropical Storm Lee. It came into the US as a hurricane, and once it hits land, it does lose its potency a little bit, and it became a tropical storm by the time it was over Maryland. Some of the heavy precipitation events that happened in the county happened in 2020, 2022, we got hit too. That's something we need to update on this slide. These were more not tropical storms, but more severe localized events. The flash floods, which we will get to in following slides, they cause flooding in certain communities, and it was not county-wide. And so every few years, as this slide alludes to, we do have some flooding event or the other that will occur in our county, and that's just the nature of it. Concerning tropical storms and hurricanes, and Dawn mentioned this early on, June is our flood awareness month. And the reason June is our flood awareness month is because June is what we in Prince George's County officially consider the start of hurricane season. The Atlantic Ocean's temperature rises due to the summer heat, and that is the starting process for hurricanes that impact the eastern coast. So that June kicks off, but really July, August is when you get more widespread chances of hurricanes, when the temperatures have risen substantially. So we kick off hurricane season with this June being our flood awareness month, and it runs through till early November. So you have the potential for hurricanes to hit from June to November, even though I would say July, August, September, and into October are the higher, where you have a high risk of hurricanes, tropical storms coming our way. So what are the county's flooding hotspots? Most of the county's flooding, or at least incidences of flooding in the past, have occurred in our, of course, highly urban areas. And given that our county is more heavily urbanized in the inner beltway communities, so that's the western portion, that's where most of flooding issues have been reported. So the inner beltway communities, the low-lying areas along the Anacostia River, even along the Potomac River, we have had high incidences of flooding, and it's just mostly to do with the urbanization and the lay of the land. They may tend to be flat areas, low-lying areas, just rainwater doesn't rapidly drain away from these areas, or the streams can easily get overwhelmed, the bigger streams as well as some of the smaller streams. So this is a map of some of the flooding hotspots based on various data sources that the county has received from complaints from communities. Our partners with Public Works has informed us of areas that they have been notified of, FEMA data related to claims that property owners have made, and even some 911 data. Sometimes the fire and police agencies, they report, they go and perform water rescues, or rescue people from flooded properties. So this is an area of, this is a data set based on all those data sources. And as you can see, we have several areas in the county that have had flooding in the past and can be considered flooding hotspots. And just because another area may not show, may not come up as a flooding hotspot, it doesn't mean it will not get flooded. The risk is lower, but as FEMA puts it to, everybody is at risk of flooding. It's just that some are at a higher risk and some may be at a lower risk, but flooding could occur anywhere. Flooding causes. So there are two major types of rain events that cause flooding, and I did touch on these earlier on. We have the flash floods, which are intense short duration events that occur over one neighborhood and may not occur over another. They will cause just the sheer volume of rainwater that falls over a small area will overwhelm our storm drain systems and low-lying areas and other locations where the water does not drain away quickly can become ponded rapidly. It may be flowing water, it may be ponded water, but you can have several feet of water in some of these areas, and this develops very quickly, and these are due to these flash floods. Then the other type of rain event are the tropical storms. These are more widespread, long duration. They are slow developing in a sense because you have just rainfall falling over several hours, if not days, and rivers slowly rise as more and more water gathers into them. And rain and the most severe flooding may even occur in an area where the rainfall was not that severe, but the upstream areas, the upland areas, got a lot of rainfall. That water slowly drains along the river, but the river gets overwhelmed and overflows its banks. So the area that gets flooded may or may not have had severe rainfall, and also the flooding may occur several hours or a day later after the rain event, because rainwater takes a while to percolate through the ground into streams and overwhelm those stream channels. So the rain may have ended by the time the stream is at its peak flow. So the flash floods and the tropical storm, hurricanes type events. One more item I'll mention is that the latter, the tropical storms, these are usually well known, are predictable. The National Weather Service and other services monitor these storms, and we generally know a couple of days, if not more, ahead of time that these are going to happen. Flash floods, we do know that there's a high chance of flash floods, but where is it going to happen cannot be easily or readily made known. National Weather Service may put out a warning saying there's a high risk for flash floods this afternoon, but is it going to be in Greenbelt or is it going to be in Fort Washington? It could be dry in Greenbelt. It could rain heavily in Fort Washington. So the exact location is not usually, cannot be usually predicted or cannot ever be predicted, but just that the weather and the climate, weather conditions are conducive for flash floods, for severe thunderstorms, which may cause flash floods, but exactly where it may occur cannot usually be made known. So that makes it harder to kind of get ready for those events. One other item along with watersheds that you may hear is a floodplain. And a floodplain is the part of a stream that receives water during storm events. So a floodplain usually abuts the stream channel outside of the banks. Usually the water is within a stream channel, within the stream banks, but as the flow in the water increases, the stream overflows the banks and inundates a wider area. And that area is considered a floodplain. And for insurance purposes and regulatory purposes, The 100-year floodplain is usually considered, and the 100-year floodplain is that floodplain that will get is the area that will get inundated with stream flow during a 100-year event. And a 100-year event is the 100-year rainfall, or the rainfall that has a chance of occurring once every 100 years. So it's a very severe event, and that area of the stream that gets inundated with stream flow during that event is called the 100-year floodplain. So riverine flooding is when this floodplain has flow. Also, when the floodplain may usually be dry, so houses, roads exist in these floodplains. But when those severe events happen and the stream overtops its banks and fills up the floodplains, any structure that's in that floodplain will get inundated with stream flow, flood waters. So there are this is a figure. The picture shows Western Branch, that's Water Street, which is kind of well known to get flooded during high flow events of the Western Branch stream. So this is during, I believe, this could be from Tropical Storm Lee, so that's 2011, where the stream overtops its banks and floods all the low-lying areas next to the stream and inundates, in this case, that portion near the bridge on Water Street. Similarly, homes or other structures that are built in the vicinity of a channel can get flooded when the stream overtops its banks. So this is riverine flooding. And usually we have maps that I'll talk about in the next slide, next few slides, that shows the floodplains of a stream and areas that people who may reside in them have to take extra precautions because they are at a high risk of flooding. This is another example of flooding in our county. This is on Kenilworth Avenue during an August 2022 storm. On the left is, I think it was either shot from a drone or from a helicopter. I captured this from a news station of flooding. And on the right is a flood map that shows what is the area that will get inundated during those 100-year event, that severe storm event. And surprisingly, the two of them match quite well. This is flooding from due to the Anacostia River, the north. I believe this is the northeast. The northeast branch, Anacostia River, and it overtops its banks, fills the low-lying areas, and comes onto Kenilworth Avenue in this case, and floods parking lot and few other areas that are low-lying. And usually after a day or so of the severe rainfall, the water does subside, and you may not have this much water, but this is immediately after the rain event. So that's the riverine flooding, and here is a little short bit more about flash floods, which are caused by intense localized short duration storms. We in Prince George's County, we get during the summer months, thunderstorms are a frequent cause of such storm events. These usually happen on hot, humid days where it's usually in the 90 degrees humid, and you get these thunderstorms that come rolling through from West Virginia out west, and goes through our county. And some areas may get 3-4 inches of rainfall within a span of an hour or a couple of hours. Others may get barely a short uh, dusting of rainfall. And flooding usually occurs outside of floodplains in that. So far, the pictures I showed were of floodplains getting being inundated. But with these summer thunderstorm flash floods, flooding can happen in any low-lying areas because these are not due to a river being overwhelmed or a stream being overwhelmed, but just because so much water came and the storm drain system or couldn't convey that water, or even backyards and other areas that may sometimes convey water just gets overwhelmed. And here are some pictures of some flash flooding impacting or changing roads into small creeks that you can, on that first picture you can see one of our roads just becoming a river, just given the intensity of that flash flood, and everybody's yards plus other areas conveying water to the lowest point, which in this case thankfully happens to be the street. Usually it tends to be the street. The streets tend to be lower than private properties, and then that becomes a channel because the storm drain system under the street is probably flowing full and is at capacity. Storm drain systems are usually designed for not for like a 100-year event. They're designed for something more frequent, like a 10-year event. So anytime the event is more extreme than that, you will have flow occurring over and above that storm drain system. So these are some pictures of flash flooding causing the streets and properties to get ponded water far from any stream and not due to a stream getting overwhelmed with the flow. This is just our land getting, urban areas getting overwhelmed with the rainfall amount. So that's is a quick primer on the types of flooding we in Prince George's County receives, the nature of flooding, and if you have any questions, I guess I'll just keep talking and you can just jot them down, or please put them on the chat and we can get to them. We have, I got 10 more slides, and the next sections are all about how you can get information about your flood risk, how to let the county know of certain issues, and basically how to get in touch with us. And let me just quickly check my time. It's 12:34, so I'll speak for another 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'll open it for Q&A. Now, one of the best sources for flood risk information is FEMA's National Flood Hazard Layer, NFHL. That stands for National Flood Hazard Layer. They have maps of the 100-year floodplains nationwide, but where you can put in an address and zoom in to your location of interest. They get updated because these are living maps. Development happens, floodplains, there are changes to models that determine the floodplain. So things are continuously in flux, and FEMA is very good at keeping these updated as changes happen. New data is made available, new models are developed, land use is impacted. So this is always a good source. And I go to this primarily just because it's always kept accurate and updated, and it tends to be a little slow sometimes, but usually one of your good areas. So again, this shows the 100-year. So this is all still based on streams overtopping their banks and inundating the adjacent areas. So this is riverine flooding floodplains, the 100-year floodplain. And they also have the 500-year floodplain too, but usually for regulatory purposes, flood insurance purposes, the 100-year floodplain is what's shown. Now, just because you may live in an area that's outside of what's considered the at-risk area in the floodplain doesn't mean you don't have a flooding risk. There is still a risk. It could be, you could be in a low-lying area. You may be impacted by a flash flood that inundates your storm drain system. So there could be flooding outside of this. So this is only talking about riverine flooding, and the way FEMA denotes is if you are in the floodplain, you are at a high risk, and if you are elsewhere, you are at a low risk. So you're still at a risk, but your risk may be lower. And everybody, wherever you are eligible for flood insurance. You don't have to be at a high risk area to get flood insurance. This is an example of a FEMA firm map, which shows the area that the darker shaded area is the 100-year, lighter shaded area is the 500, and the non-shaded is those at low risk that are outside of the floodplains. FEMA zones, if you are in the floodplain, you are considered to be in the special flood hazard area, subject to flooding by the 1% annual charge flood event. And those are usually called A. Those zones start with a label A. AE, AH, AO, they all mean something slightly different, but they're all areas that can be flooded during a 100-year event. Zone X is the one that is the 500-year due to a more extreme but more rare event. And other areas that are not shaded are called Zone X or Zone D. Primarily Zone X is what you will encounter. And another great source is pgatlas.com. This is just for our county. I believe it's a collaboration with the county and parks, Prince George's, the MNC PPC. This has an advantage. The county, so FEMA has floodplains. You can have, and the county has done its own watershed studies, have its own floodplain analysis, and it has also developed floodplains that may be more extensive in some places than FEMA's. So PG Atlas shows both the FEMA floodplains as well as the county's floodplains. So there is some added information by going to the PG Atlas site. It may not always get updated when FEMA updates a map. PG Atlas won't get updated at the same time, but it does get updated maybe at a lesser frequency. So there are some advantages. And one other great thing about PG Atlas is I have found that to be faster, and you can, similar to FEMA's layer, you can put an address, zoom in, and look at different layers. And you have other layers. You can look at aerial imagery and streamlines. You can switch on and off certain layers and play around and get a feel for, are you in a floodplain? Are you far from a floodplain? What are the environmentally sensitive features exist near your property? There's even a tree layer. So just a wealth of information if you are curious about some location and its risk for flooding or its other environmental features that it has nearby. So pgatlas.com is the site. The first one was the FEMA layer, the FEMA site. This is PG Atlas. We also have a floodplain portal and ArcGIS River map. If you just enter Prince George's County floodplain portal in like Google, you will come up, you will get this site. It's the same thing on an aerial imagery. You will have the floodplains of the FEMA floodplains shown. So that's another web source that you can utilize. I don't gravitate towards this as much. It's either the FEMA or the PG Atlas, but this is a third one that we do have. So those are great sources for you to find out your flood risk, the nearby floodplains, and your risk of flooding due to streams or overtopping their banks. I will talk about certain ways that you can either be informed of flooding and also how you can let us know about your flooding. The best way if you live in Prince George's County is to sign up for Alert Prince George's. If you just type in Alert Prince George's on a search engine, you will come up to Alert Prince George's. You can enter your phone numbers, mobile phone numbers, and you can check on and off certain notifications, whether you want to know about flooding, about school closures, all kinds of public announcements that are routinely put out. You can sign up for them, and you can also block out certain times where you may not want to be alerted, say in the middle of the night. But it's a great source for you to just stay informed of certain emergencies. So Alert Prince George's, and for flooding, they will relay information that the National Weather Service puts out. So for example, yesterday my phone gave out a message saying that there was the chance of severe thunderstorms rolling through our areas. I know Montgomery County, there was some tornadoes that touched down. I don't believe Prince George's got any. So there was a warning that said from this time to this time, there is the chance of severe weather occurring. So please be cautious. So Alert Prince George's is a great site for you to stay informed of severe weather, amongst other things. You can visit our website, DOE flood management page. Rarely do we put real-time incidents, but just to get phone numbers, get an idea of what the county is doing, and some of the current events that are going on related to flooding or the environment. Prince George's Preparedness is an app that our partners at the Office of Emergency Management have put out. It also gives you alerts and provides some other information. So that's another source that you could download and have installed on your mobile phone. It also links you, it'll also give you a link to Alert PGC if you want to sign up through there. But it has a few other information sources too. It's a work in progress, I have found. So maybe in the future they'll have more functionalities, but I would gravitate towards the Alert PGC. That's the best source. But this is another item that the county has made available, Prince George's Preparedness. If you can look that up on your app store, and you'll find this app. So those are the best ways to stay informed of severe weather in our county. And we also love to hear from you, both about flooding and other concerns. So PGC 311, most of you must have heard of this. Hopefully, there's been a lot of communications about PGC 311. This is your primary source to let us know about your flooding issues. If it is, of course, life-threatening and flooding is happening, you must call you should call 911 if you need assistance. But if you want to inform of nuisance flooding, such as a blocked inlet, you got some yard flooding and you want the county to be made aware of your yard flooding situation, or any other kind of a nuisance flooding, or there was a threat of flooding, it may not have entered your property, but there was some rising water on a channel or some other location. Take a picture, put a 311 call, provide as much detail as possible. We love to get this information, but it's always good when we can use it for an analysis. And for an analysis, we like to know when the flooding happened, maybe a picture of the flooding, because those items tells us the source, what was the cause of the flooding, so it helps with our analysis. So provide as much detail. And 311, you can either use the web portal or the mobile app, PGC 311, or 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You can call 311, or if you're outside, there's a phone number that they can be reached at. Another great way that to let us know about flooding is through our through this email, doecares@co.pg.md.us. We monitor that in our department, and people have uploaded pictures and told us of flooding issues that they may have witnessed. The more data, the more information we have, that keeps us more aware of what's going on in our communities. And sometimes when we are looking for projects to do, the more information we have, that can be used to substantiate the need for performing a flood mitigation study or a flood mitigation project. So we love to hear about flooding issues through any of these methods, or just call us directly at our phone number and you'll get routed to the flood group or the appropriate person within our agency. So that ends the presentation. I think I may have run a little over my 30 minutes. Yes, but we love to hear from you. So please put in the chat anything you would like to hear us cover on future presentations. What made you come to this? We love to get feedback, but it's open for questions. If anyone has questions, please unmute yourself.
Lalantha, we have a few questions. First question comes from Sharon Hall. Sharon, would you like to unmute yourself?
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. All right, so one of the things you touched on just briefly just now was different studies. And one of the questions I ask is for those drain holes in the streets and on properties, how often are they cleaned out and checked?
I'm sorry, how often is, I'm sorry.
Those drain holes in the streets and on the properties, and in, different apartment complexes, how often are they looked at and cleaned out?
So the maintenance of the storm drain inlets, I think you're referring to a storm drain inlet or storm drain pipe, is handled by our Department of Public Works and Transportation. If the structure is a public structure, and you can usually tell that if it's on a main street that's maintained by DPW&T, Department of Public Works and Transportation. I would recommend that if you have a concern about the storm drain system being maintained, to put in a request for an inspection via 311, because sometimes it's difficult for a resident to discern whether a storm drain inlet outlet pipe is privately maintained or publicly maintained.
Okay, so it's up to the resident to do that. So
to let us,
with all the, yeah, okay, go ahead.
yeah, to let us know that a system is underperforming. Now, there is a schedule of maintenance for the public storm drain systems by Department of Public Works and Transportation. And I can't remember the schedule. I don't know if it's every 2 years or 3 years. I don't remember exactly. I'd have to follow up with my colleagues.
All right, so they maintain it. It's not like the bridges where they leave it and then it's only when it collapses do they say, oh, we should have been maintaining it all this time.
No, Department of Public Works does maintenance. They do. Yeah.
Okay. The other question I wanted to know, I took a home buying class and the person speaking about flood insurance said you're only covered if it's a national emergency. Now, could you clarify if that's correct information or not?
That's not correct information. If you have flood insurance, a
Mhm.
insurance policy,
Yes.
depending upon what the terms of your policy are, you should be covered for flood damages. We will have a session, I think it's session 3, Lalantha, on June 20th, that
Uh-huh.
speaks specifically to flood insurance.
Yeah,
All right.
the third session in 2 weeks from now, we'll have
Mhm.
Maryland Insurance Administration personnel come and talk specifically about flood insurance. But yes, agreeing with
Oh.
Juan, if a national disaster is declared, then there's federal funds made available. But you as a homeowner with flood insurance, if you are impacted due to, say, one of those flash flood type events, it may be only a street or a smaller neighborhood that got impacted. But if you have flood insurance, you will be covered due to your flood insurance.
Okay. All right then. I'll make
But,
sure I'm at that lecture.
yeah, it's today is the 6th, 13th, June 20th one.
Sure. Appreciate it. Thank you for your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining and thank you for your questions.
Thank you. Lalantha, we have another question from Vivian Bell regarding floodplain buffers and wetlands, steep hill, and highly erodible soils. Ms. Bell, would you like to come off mute and ask your question, or I can try to work through this one?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I
Yes.
can, yes.
So there is the floodplain PG County ordinances, and we're very familiar with PG Atlas and FEMA and all of the very useful information that has been presented. So the question is, what is the buffer in this kind of conditions that usually require for it not to be disturbed? But if somebody like an adjacent neighbor disturbs it and it causes runoff, who do we go to?
So I think your question is, if you have a wetlands area or a location of steep slopes and highly erodible slopes, there should be a buffer around those types of areas. And if someone encroaches on the buffer, who do you contact? Is that the question?
And causes damage
Yeah,
to an adjacent property or affects.
right. So again, your first point of contact should be 311. The 311 system allows residents to describe their service requests. So in this, for example, if you as a resident suspect that someone has encroached, has performed some type of disturbance, within an area that is defined as a wetland or a highly erodible soil area or steep slope area, you can put that that concern in 311 and request that the county do an investigation. And based on that investigation, take appropriate action. Typically, our enforcement office, which falls within Department of Permitting, Inspection, and Enforcement, will conduct that type of investigation and assess the current conditions to determine the appropriate actions to take to resolve any infraction, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so if there's overlay zones, and there might be critical area, there might be floodplain, who implements floodplain? I understand DPI is the one that does enforcement. Do they then determine who they go to? Where, like, for example, going to you?
Yes, we coordinate, the agencies coordinate with each other based on our respective investigations and findings through those investigations. For example, if Department of the Environment investigates drainage complaint or flooding complaint, and we determine that there has been some type of unpermitted activity within a stream or within a floodplain area, then we would refer that service request, of course, with our observations and our recommendations to our enforcement agency, which is DPI, to take appropriate action of enforcement.
And the specific question is from you, floodplain specialized people. Are there particular groups or people that should be tapped for the implementation of a little more specialized floodplain ordinances on these conditions?
In terms of strengthening our current floodplain ordinance?
No, implementing them. People, I mean, because it's overlay, it's quite honestly, one area doesn't talk to the other. Or
One agency, you mean?
well, for example, you do in the presentation, in addition to PG 311, we've used it extensively, so we're familiar. And for example, I still want to go back to what is the buffer in the floodplain?
So the standard buffer, Lalantha, I think it's somewhere between 50 and 100-foot buffer around a floodplain.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
And
so it would be considered expanded buffer, yeah, with these conditions.
yes, and any, I mean, if you're doing any land disturbance, I mean, the county ordinance requires you to check with DPI on are there specific conditions that should be met. So usually DPI will look at are there streams near where you're planning to disturb the land, and if they find a stream that's of certain, that meets certain criteria, it has to be a certain size, then they will require them to make sure that the floodplain is identified and they stay away from the floodplain with some buffer.
So it sounds like you made a very nice presentation, and in the 311 slide, you indicate also the email of, I can't remember, but it was the
DOE CAS.
Yes, so maybe we kind of provide a little more information and
Sure.
you can guide us.
Will
You,
be.
collective you.
Sure. feel
Does that
free
make sense?
to reach out, and we'll be happy to
Okay.
look into
I don't want to
it.
take everybody's time, so we appreciate it and thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lalantha, we have a couple of questions from MT. MT, would you like to come offline to ask a few questions? I think you're on mute, MT. So one of MT questions is, he has a community pool above his home on the hill. It leaks water into his yard. What rights does he have to make sure that they keep their water off their property? I'll take this question. If you could submit that request via 311, our drainage investigators will come out to investigate the situation and recommend appropriate action. So when you go into 311, you want to submit a request about, let's say it's yard flooding, if the water's coming into your yard and ponding. And that request will be assigned to Department of the Environment's drainage investigators for an investigation. MT also had a question regarding your slide, Lalantha, where you show the hot spots for flooding. I answered the question, I think, about the purple areas. He also had a question about the red highlighted areas. I think those were coastal, but I wasn't certain.
That is correct. Those are the coastal areas. So the southern part of the county is considered coastal, tidally influenced. So the Patuxent River on the east side of our county, on the eastern side, there's a portion of it running up close to the Upper Marlboro area that is considered tidal. So the red is really the tidal portion. And then on the Potomac and Anacostia, there are tidal portions on the Anacostia around Bladensburg, and on the Potomac, the southern tip. So the red is for coastal, tidally influenced waterways.
And MT also had a question, just kind of a general scenario about his flood risk. So he indicates MT indicates that their house is at 300-foot elevation. Would that protect them from flooding? My comment back was, it's all relative. So, Lalantha, would you like to?
Yes, it is relative. It's relative to what the flood elevation is in that area. If the flood elevation is 290, yeah, you're 10 feet higher. But if the flood elevation is 300, you're at the same elevation as the flooding. So the best way is for you to I guess you could use DOE CARES and send us information about your address or location of interest, and we can provide you with some detailed information of the floodplain, the water level elevation of any nearby streams if you are in a floodplain, and essentially what your flood risk is from your flood risk is from the floodplain information. We can people sometimes call us directly, or you can put in a DOE CARES, tell us that you're looking for more specific floodplain detail, and let us know the location that you're interested in. And we'll be happy to follow up with some maps. We can send them via email to you. If email is not the most suitable, but give us a call and we can figure out how we can communicate your flood risk.
So, hi. I am looking at the FEMA map of my house,
Sure.
and it has, I'm gonna say 20 things underneath the map. Pin, map panels, other areas, et cetera, et cetera. There seems to be a grade area, says special flood hazard area without base flood elevation. These are all buzzwords. I have no idea what any of this means. And it's got a green triangle around my neighborhood. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, the green triangle is a little new. I'm not sure what the green triangle is, but the special flood hazard area means that you are in a 100-year floodplain. They haven't determined the exact elevation. That's why without base flood elevation means. So it's an approximate study. A detailed study is where you have elevations, and an approximate study is they haven't done a detailed study, so exact elevations are not known. We'll be happy to take a closer look at your location if you want to shoot us an email with the area of concern.
Okay.
But,
what is the 311 website? I don't use the app.
for that, Don, I don't think he should follow 311, right? He's looking for floodplain information. Maybe use the DOE chaos email link that I have put up. It's DOE chaos, DOECARES at co.pg.md.us.
Hold on. Leave it up for a second.
Sure. Yeah, the green triangle, sometimes there are levees, and if you're behind a levee, you may have some additional information.
So on this FEMA website, the words underneath the map, the one that applies to me is the one that's in gray, I guess. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I wish I could share my screen so you could see what I'm looking at, but there is no shared screen here.
Melinda, you had a snapshot, I mean, a map of a FEMA flood hazard area. Yeah, maybe.
Something of this. Okay, I guess I do see something.
Underneath of it is a graph, a chart.
Oh, he's looking at a ferment.
When I'm looking at my address, underneath of that is PIN, map panel information, other areas, special flood hazards, other features, general structures. And it seems to be that one of them is grayed out, I'm assuming, based on, like, this is you, is what this seems to be.
Okay.
I don't know what this is.
All right. Well, we'll
Can
get
I
to the
share my screen with you?
I believe you might be able to if I make you a co-host.
Or show captions. Oh, share screen. No, you've disabled share screen.
Yeah, I have to make you a co-host. Okay, let's see if there are any other questions, and then maybe we will do a screen share. I'll make you a co-host. Were there any other chat questions?
Yes, sorry. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Yeah.
I don't think so. And if I've missed anyone, let me know.
Or ORJI just asked a question about his backyard.
Oh, okay. Okay, let's see if I can find that. That's not the same as the stairwell question then? No.
Yeah, the stairwell question is separate. It's a 1960 home, and they put a drain both on the outside of the basement door and inside. And when it rains, the outside drain has clogged with leaves. So it flows under the door into my basement and immediately disappears down this drain, regardless of how much water is coming in. I don't have a sump pump because I would have a motor for that. And I'm just wondering, and somebody told me they don't do this anymore. Like, only older houses are allowed to have this drainage system. So I don't know. I'm just curious to know where that water goes, but it never comes up. Water never comes into the basement through that drain, but it definitely goes out.
Uh, might be some underground pipe somewhere, but I don't. Yeah, that could be a good question, a good request to put into 311 for our investigation. I've never heard of some pipe, but I mean, things happen early on in the building industry, so there could be a pipe somewhere under the home that drains that water out to, I guess, maybe the storm drain. Is there a storm drain system along your road?
I know houses built before
At
the
the bottom of the
80s.
hill, I live in a cul-de-sac, and at the bottom, it's hilly, and at the bottom is where the water would go into a sewer.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
probably.
I know like some of the older houses built before the 80s,
Yeah,
will
1960.
yeah, you may have areaway drains, areaway drains connected to your sewer line, your sanitary sewer line,
Mhm.
WSSC line. So I know they stopped doing that in the 80s. So some of the older houses may have connections, rainwater connections to the sewer line. But yes, I think that requires a visit to kind of look at the property. So 311 would be the best way to go.
We have one more question from Origi. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Would you like to come off mute and ask your question, or I can? Oh, here you go.
Yes, Oji,
Hello.
I'm here.
Yes, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, whenever it rains on the stream, the whole backyard is flooded from the stream at the backyard.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the water from the neighborhood, the whole neighborhood that are running, or everything will flooded in our backyard.
Mhm. And
It won't go through. Huh?
yes, so I think this is one issue that you want to submit to 311 for our investigators, Department of the Environment's drainage investigators, to come out and assess the situation. They will take a look at not only your backyard, but they'll look further upstream to see what's contributing to flooding in your yard, and make a assessment as to what appropriate actions can be taken to provide you with flood relief. So in the chat, I noticed that you indicate, is there any way to block off the stream to stop flooding in your yard? That's not something that we want to do. There are other measures that we might be able to take to reduce the flood risk. The problem with blocking any part of the stream or the flood plain area along the stream is that we can cause more detrimental flooding by creating a blockage. So having our drainage investigators come out to perform a site assessment will provide us and you with information as to what can be done to alleviate the flooding that you're seeing in your yard.
Yeah, can I say something? Because my husband we went to he submitted a paper to the county. They directed us to um Good Luck Road, the park center there. So when they came out, they look at the backyard. They said that it's not for them; it's for PG County.
Mhm. Yes, they sent the Park and Recreation Department falls under our Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. So if that particular organization does not have uh, is not at the is not the cause of water flowing onto your property, then there's no action that they can take, right? Because they're they're a state agency. But the county, through either Department of Public Works and Transportation, or Department of the Environment, or even Department of Permitting, Inspection, and Enforcement, can take appropriate actions as a county agency to address flooding issues on a residential property. So based on your description of the type of flooding that you're seeing, it appears to me that your complaint should first start with Department of the Environment to determine what's causing the flooding, and then the appropriate actions that can be taken following that determination to alleviate your flood risk. Yeah,
So,
yeah, if you submit your request to 311, Lamantha shared with you the slide showing the 311 app. You can either call 311, or you can submit your request for an investigation via the app.
okay.
Yeah, that would be
So 311 is the app.
yes.
That's-
You can either download the app. The app gives you a few added functionalities. You can track your request, and you can see how it's where it is at. Someone one of our personnel from DOE will be in touch with you, and they'll come out and make an assessment. And I'll just add to something Don said, that yeah, every problem is unique, and if you actually have a major stream running behind your property, there might be it may be limited because you're talking about a huge volume of water. But if it's a smaller stream, there might be some remedies possible. Not sure exactly your situation, but yes, this will require someone to visit you, maybe even talk to your neighbors, see if this is if yours is a unique situation, or whether everyone's backyards tend to have flow on water on them. And, so based on that, there may be a readily available solution. Yeah, at least an assessment can be done. Someone will definitely come out and
Okay.
give you possible solutions. Yeah, so put that
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't think we have any other questions, Melinda. If I've missed anyone, please let us know.
And okay, and MT, I am going to make you a co-host, which will enable, well, before we do that, there's one more slide. Dawn, if you want to talk about upcoming sessions, and that will conclude.
Yes, thank you, Lalantha. So first of all, I do want to thank everyone for joining us today. This has been really helpful for my team, Lalantha and I, to hear some of the concerns of residents concerning flooding. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your questions with us. We will address questions that we have not yet addressed. There was a question indicating whether we could provide the slides. I think we can do that, so I will work with our public information officer to make sure that I'm following the right protocol to provide the slides. But our next session will be next Thursday at 12 noon, and we'll do it again at 6 p.m. For session 2 only. This session is a follow-on to session 1. So today we shared with you some of the basics about watersheds and floods and how they happen, where they occur. In session 2, we're going to share with you some of the flood risk reduction measures that residents can take and that the county might take in the future in terms of bigger capital type of projects to provide flood relief for communities in the county. So please plan to join us for session 2. next Thursday, June 13th. And then for the subsequent sessions on June 20th and June 27th. Thank you again, Lalantha.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, everyone. And that email address for letting us know DOE cares, that has an S at the end. So it's DOECARES, DOE cares at co.pg.md.us. Okay, that kind of officially concludes the session. I'm going to just try to chat with MT. So if anyone wants to hear that conversation, you're welcome to stay on. But otherwise, hopefully we'll see you June 13th at our next session. Thanks for anyone leaving, and have a good rest of the day. MT, I have made you a co-host, which will give you the power to share your screen.
Okay.
And along with that, I'll stop sharing. Not that, oops.